channel. This week I'm going to take you through how I made this Katniss Everdeen costume from the Hunger Games Catching Fire. Without any further ado, let's dive on in.
To start this costume, I'm using Butterick B4131 views A and F as a base to start the mock-up.
So this is the mock-up I've done for the skirt so far. As you can see, I have shortened it along the front here, and on the side I've done the curve down to the bottom where it trains out. So now I've just got to do the top half of it.
Unfortunately, the pattern I have is a size too small for me, and as it's a discontinued pattern, I had to work with what I've got. So I am going to size up the pattern pieces. I do this by marking out the difference and then using a curved ruler to tidy up the edges and make it all nice and smooth.
So here's all the pattern pieces scaled up and cut out. The next step for me now is to cut it out of this bed sheet here, which I will be using as a mock-up fabric, and see how the fit is and make any tweaks from there before I attempt to do the weird collary neck bit with the straps. Here it is with both sides put together, and as you can see I've got a bit of a gap in the back there, so I've drafted a new pattern piece. Voila! And what I've done is I've added about an inch up the top here, so I'm cutting it out. I'm going to sew it into that one there, and we'll see how it fits. And there we go, no more gaping. Here it is on me. This is a test fit. There's no boning or anything in it yet, obviously. It's just to see if it's going to fit and if I like the shape. It's cool. So I think the next part for me will be cutting out actual mock-ups of the weird neck straps and attaching the skirt onto the bottom of this and then seeing how the whole thing fits overall. And here we go, here it is with the straps on them. I think they're a bit tight at the moment, and I think her dress sits a little bit lower in the front here. I'll have to double check. They crisscross where they're meant to, and they look how they're meant to, so I'm pretty happy with that.
Here I am making those adjustments that I just talked about, and all I'm doing is just drawing straight onto the mock-up using a Vivid. And now it's time to combine the top pattern with the skirt pattern.
Alrighty, so here is version 2 of the mock-up. I'm just about to make a few adjustments to it, one of them being flattening out the bust hair a bit, because at the moment it's too pointed. And then I'm going to change the angle that I've got this coming in here. So I'm going to have it come across there and then lower. And then in the back I'm going to bring it down so it sits just about here.
Here I am once again making the adjustments with my trusty Vivid and cutting it straight into the mock-up before transferring it into the final pattern piece. Now that I'm finally happy with the pattern, it's on to the lining. I'm using two fabrics for the lining, the first of which for the top half is just a 100% cotton. This will be double layered just to give some structure to the dress. After basting all the pattern pieces together, it's time to now sew the pieces together. I then clip any of the curves just so that it makes it easier when it comes to pressing the seams open and flat. After pressing the seams open, I add a cotton twill tape to the waistband for some more structure and support. And using that same twill tape, I add boning channels along all of the seam lines. I then cut lengths of plastic boning to fit all of the boning channels.
So here is the understructure for the dress. So basically this is just to give me some extra support when I wear this dress. I will be adding a different fabric down the bottom here to line the skirt. That's why it stops along the waist there.
This fabric is just a polyester called beam silk. And after sewing all of the skirt pieces together, it's time to attach it to the top. I have two fabrics which I'm going to layer together to mimic the look of her dress, the first being this gold oil slick fabric and the second being this black cotton lace.
Hi there, this is Editing Kelly jumping in to explain to you
why I didn't choose the same fabrics that they use in the film. So I don't know if you know, but they actually used a laser cut leather to make the dresses from in the film. I'm going to be traveling overseas with these costumes, so I took one look at all that leather and went, that's going to be far too heavy, and if I do take it over, it'll probably take up my entire baggage allowance. Not to mention that I plan on wearing this to march in the Dragon Con parade, and we all know how hot that can be, and if I was to wear a full-on leather outfit like that, I would probably die from heat exhaustion, so that is why I opted to change the fabrics to what I did.
Anyway, back to the costume. So first things I did was cut out all of the pattern pieces from both of the fabrics. I then laid the corresponding pattern pieces on top of each other and hand basted these in place, which took forever. Luckily the next part was super simple, as it was just sewing all of the pattern pieces together. But oh my gosh, all that hand basting, I swear.
So the lining layer and the outer layer are now done. What I've got to do next is make the neck straps and make a bias tape out of the outer fabrics to run along this edge here. So that's what I'm going to do now.
After cutting all my bias noodles out of both the fabrics, I then sandwiched a cord in between them and ran them through my sewing machine to create piping, which I then put along the entire neckline. And finally, the neckline as well.
Sometimes when I'm making things, I do really stupid mistakes, like I put the lining in backwards. So that's why the collar piece is sitting the wrong way around, which means I now have to unpick all of the lining and sew it back in the right way, which is going to be more difficult this time around because I've trimmed it. I cut all the corners and things like you're meant to when you're turning it out. So it means in some areas I have less than like half a mil of seam allowance. So let's see if I can fix this, eh? And fixed! I absolutely love it. It looks so awesome. Can't wait to show you guys what the whole thing looks like. It's a new day, and that means there's a new problem. So today I'm going to be working on Katniss's headband thing that she wears with this costume, and I'm finding it really tricky because there's not any clear reference images of what it is, so I've sort of just got to wing it. I've got a whole bunch of materials laid out that I'm going to attempt to make it from. I don't really know what I'm doing, just making it up as we go along.
So I thought I'd start by making a headband template. So I drew half of it here and then transferred that to a foam, which I then cut out. I then traced the foam headband onto some warbler and then cut that out. Next I heated the warbler until it was pliable and then put my foam on it. I then trimmed off the corners and I cut along the curved edge of the headband before heating the warbler up once more and then folding those edges over, encasing the foam. While the warbler was still warm, I curved it over this headband so that it would take the same shape and fit me like a headband. I then cut out some black felt to cover the headband, and I did this just by putting on some hot glue and sticking it straight down. I also covered the inside to make it look pretty, but I realised I should have done this after I put the gold and black fabric on the outside too. Speaking of, I'm using the same gold fabric that I did in the dress and cutting out the headband shape, and once again using hot glue to apply that to the headband. And repeating for this matte black sequin fabric as well. Now for the weird circly bit. So I'm using this button and covering it in batting, which I'm just doing with hot glue because that's how we're making everything in this project. I then covered that with the same gold fabric and a layer of the matte sequins as well. Finally gluing a circle of felt to the back, and now it's ready to be glued to the headband.
So the florist wire that I brought yesterday is entirely too soft to be using for what I wanted to. As you can see, look at it. It's like noodles. So I went to Spotlight and got these two instead. They're thicker gauge and they're nice and sturdy. And the cool thing is they're already the colours that I want them to be, so I don't have to muck around with gluing stuff to them now, which is perfect. Anyway, let's get these attached to the headband and then it's finally done.
To attach them, I'm just putting blobs of glue straight onto the headband and then holding the wire in place with a crochet hook. I wanted to make two of the wires look pretty, so I took this gold florist wire and wrapped it around one of the brown ones. After all the wires were glued in place, I then took the buttons that I'd covered before and glued them over top of where the wires were on the headband so it covers all that ugly hot glue. Now it's time for her bracelet, so I started by tracing out my hands on both sides. And then I drew in the shape of the bracelet. I cut this out and then checked that it actually fit my hand, which it did. And so then I traced it onto some warbler and then cut that out. I then heated this piece up and then moulded it to my hand while it was still warm and pliable. After it had cooled completely, I cut out 3 slits so that I could put the leather straps through. And then I made the leather straps, so as you can see, I used a whole bunch of scrap pieces here, and I cut a 1 centimeter wide strip from it. I also cut 3 strands of 1/2 centimeter wide strips as well. I glued these together at one point and then I braided them together to create the strapping for the bottom of the glove bracelet thing, whatever this is. One of the parts has this odd looking bit of leather that has no function whatsoever, but it has a ring on it, so I made that part here. And finally it was all painted a very shiny silver.
So silly me forgot to film the last part of it, but it was basically just gluing the braided bit here in. But as you can see, it's finished. Woo! So there you have it, that is how I made this Katniss Everdeen costume from the Hunger Games Catching Fire. I'm so stoked with how this turned out. It was a really quick and easy build for me to put together. The only things I found particularly hard or confusing was this and this. And that's just because there weren't any clear photos of it, so I sort of just had to make it up as I went along and use my imagination. I'm really looking forward to wearing this costume next at DragonCon in Atlanta. I'm hopefully going to be walking the parade in it, which honestly I don't know how I'm going to be doing in these shoes, but I'll do it. I'll find a way. Next I will be making Cameron's Peter to match this one, so look out for that if you're interested. I also have a makeup tutorial for this coming up next week as well, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss that. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you like what you saw, once again hit that subscribe button. I upload every Friday or so. I usually do something crafting, sewing or fun related. With all that being said, I'll see you guys next Friday. Bye!